So what is the difference between a £50 Casio Marlin and a £5,000 Omega Seamaster? Why does one cost 100 times the price of the other? Today I'm going to be answering those questions and hopefully establishing a reason for why one watch is 100 times more expensive than the other while seemingly serving the same purpose. So starting off, we have the specifications. This is going to play a really key part in understanding why one watch is 100 times more expensive than the other. And starting that off, we have the engine of the watch, the heart of the watch, and that is the movement. The Casio has a quartz movement inside, which is easily replicatable and almost entirely machine made. These are just churned out in a factory and over again. They're not hard to make. They are the cheapest type of movement to make. Whereas the Amiga has a coaxial escapement, fully built in-house movement that's automatic. Now, automatic movements generally are more expensive than quartz movements, so that's a first off reason. It being fully in-house means that there's nothing sourced from outside sources, so therefore it's going to be more expensive again. Now, the coaxial movement means it has a special escapement, which is specialised to the Amiga company, so that's another thing that's going to add a bit more cost to it. So next we're going to be going on to the crystals that are covering these watches and protecting them from the elements. First off, with the Casio, we have a mineral glass crystal. This is flat, so therefore cheaper than a domed crystal. Also, being mineral glass, it's the cheapest there is on the market, meaning it's more susceptible to scratching opposed to sapphire, which is what the Amiga has, is a domed sapphire crystal on the front of the watch and then normal sapphire crystal that's flat on the back side of the watch. Now, going on to anti-reflective undercoating, the Amiga has anti-reflective undercoating on both the top and the bottom of the crystal, whereas on the Casio, I believe it's only on the bottom. And obviously there's different coatings that I imagine the different companies will use, but that's generally why the crystals are more expensive on the Amiga, is that it's sapphire and it is domed and it has more coating on its stop glare. So now jumping back over to the movements, I have to mention the COSC and METAS certification on the Amiga versus the 0 certification that I can find on the Casio. Now, the COSC and METAS certification means that the watch on the Amiga is going to operate within really tight tolerances each day, and there's going to be very little deviation depending on the positions that it's in, as well as the environment that it's in. The temperature deviation, as well as water pressure and Gauss, is all taken into account and measured for. This obviously means it's more regulated and it's going to run better over time. However, there is one key part of this, and that is that no automatic movement is ever going to outperform a quartz movement. So even though it has all this certification, it's only going to be better than another automatic movement, and it won't perform better than this quartz movement in the cheap Casio. So if you're looking for accuracy, automatic is just not the way to go. The Casio is going to outperform the Amiga every time. To put into deviation, the Amiga has a maximum tolerance of plus 6 seconds a day of deviation, whereas the Casio has plus or minus 20 seconds a month. Now, quartz crystals can actually go even better than that. If you find a really highly tuned one, you can have it where it's only like plus or minus 1 second a year, but not in the Casio that we're reviewing today. But while on the topic of movements, we cannot ignore the finishing of these movements. This a lot of the time is the reason a great watch is separated from a good watch, because of the level of finishing that the watchmaker has undergone to try and make this a perfect watch, therefore increasing the price tremendously. So starting off with the Casio, we have no finishing whatsoever. It's a small quartz movement housed within a plastic shroud inside the large case. That's it. The Amiga, however, is on display and likes to proudly show off all its little details. It has a Geneva wave pattern engraved on the rotor. It has blued screws and Swiss engravings, as well as a unique serial number engraved, as well as showing off its jewels. This is obviously going to cost a lot more than the Casio, and is another reason why this watch costs a lot more. But as far as actual dive potential, both of these watches are dive watches. That means they can both go underwater very far down. So the Amiga has a maximum depth rating of 300 meters, whereas the Casio has a 200 meter depth rating. Not much in it, to be honest, and there's definitely watches you can find that are cheaper than £5,000, which have ratings up to probably 600 meters. I can think of multiple right now. The Mido Ocean Star, for example, that can go all the way down to 600 meters, double the Amiga, and for less than a fifth of the price. So if actual specifications on dive potential isn't what you're after, then you're okay. But if you want to go really far down, I wouldn't even recommend an automatic movement to begin with. I would just use a dive computer. So that's really not the point of these watches. Actual diving isn't going to be on everyone's agenda and isn't the reason a lot of people buy these watches. So now jumping over to the front of the watch, let's talk about the bezels. Both of these watches have ceramic bezels, however I'm not sure what the Casio's bezel was actually made of. I know that it scratches quite easily compared to the Amiga, which is zirconium oxide. The Amiga resists scratches a lot better, and that's obviously going to cost a bit more therefore. The bezel design is also a bit more unique on the Amiga, meaning it's probably specially made for this watch, opposed to the Casio's, which is sort of interchangeable. But now let's take a look at the dials on these watches, and have a look and see if we can find out why Amigas cost so much more. So starting off with the Casio, we have a nice sunburst effect on the black dial. It's got nice hour markers, and it holds lume quite well. However, it's not finished to a great deal, and there isn't a lot of actual applied indices. A lot of it's printed on, which is obviously a lot cheaper. Moving on to the Amiga, you have applied indices and a reflective zirconium oxide dial, which is a little bit more breathtaking and a lot more expensive. Obviously the waves are perfectly etched with a laser engraver, which is obviously going to add cost as well, and the luminescence on this watch is absolutely phenomenal, so that's obviously going to add a lot of cost. Now, I'm not going to say definitively which watch looks better, because that is a highly subjective opinion, but for me personally, I have to say the Amiga for me does look better. Now, you may think I'm crazy, but for me it does look better. Maybe you'll disagree, let me know in the comments below. So I'm now going to list off a few little things you probably didn't really think of when trying to account for why one watch costs 100 times more than the other. These are little details that Amiga has that the Casio may not, or the Casio may have, the Amiga should have. So starting off with the Amiga, it has a signed crown. Just little details like that. It's a nice 3D signed crown. The Casio does not have that. It also has a display case back with a really nice custom designed screw back. Something the Casio doesn't have, it's just a generic design. The Amiga obviously has a helium escape valve, which the Casio does not. The Casio comes on a generic rubber strap with an unsigned buckle, whereas the Amiga comes with a fitted silicone strap with a signed buckle. Just little details like that can add quite a substantial amount of cost. But furthermore, we have actual details that you're probably going to notice a lot more, which is the case design, the finishing on the case with the high chamfered edge running down the Amiga, with it finishing towards the twisted lugs, opposed to the generically finished Casio with a tiny bit of chamfer, but probably not going to really notice. It's a very even finish with not too much afterthought. But we can't forget even the basic things which adds a cost to producing a watch, and that is the packaging itself, getting it to your doorstep so you can then enjoy it and wear it. Casio have a really basic approach to this, where they'll just send you a card box which inside of that has a stand on which the watch is on to keep it upright during transit, and after that you can unpack it, take off the stickers and throw the rest away, just keeping the watch. Some would argue this is perfectly adequate and that is all you need for a watch. However, Amiga would disagree with you, and instead they make it an experience to unpack the watch. The Amiga packaging is something you do not throw away, and instead something you keep for the entire ownership of your watch. Amiga deliver the watch to your doorstep inside a cardboard box surrounded by packing peanuts on the inside, and inside of that you have a card box, then inside of that you have a wooden box, and inside of that is coated with white leather everywhere. This is a citadel of leather, so the watch resides in it comfortably while it's travelling about to get to your doorstep. This is just really well thought out, and the materials used are stupidly expensive compared to the Casios. Just the leather inside of this box is probably more than the packaging used for the entirety of the Casio. You can tell a lot of care has gone into it with the secret compartments inside of the watch box, as well as designated areas for the watch manual and then the watch chronometer certification pocket. This may seem to some a bit of an unnecessary expense to the watch, but for me personally, I really enjoyed this touch, and I feel like other high-end brands should also copy. I know Rolex are quite notorious for having really bad packaging, so I can see why this is definitely adding a cost to the watch. Now let's be honest, Amiga's features do add value to the watch, and they do make it harder for Amiga to manufacture the watch, and therefore more expensive, but I wouldn't say it makes it 100 times more expensive, and obviously taking into account the profit margins within the watch. I'm not talking about that. I think this watch could still be sold for about £3,000 and they'd be making a good profit. Where the rest of the value comes from is in the brand itself. Omega is a known Swiss-made watch brand that's been around for centuries, whereas Casio is a relatively new Japan-made watch brand which isn't as respected. They are known for making cheap, affordable and reliable watches, but they're not exceptional watches like Omega's known for. Which means Amiga can charge what they want, and this is what I've seen firsthand. Since buying my watch only a year ago, my watch has gone up in value by almost £400, and what I mean by that is that when I bought my watch, I bought it straight from Amiga for £4,450, and since then, the price on their website has gone up to £4,840. There has been no change to the watch, you don't get anything more than you did then, they've just increased the value because they can. And for all those reasons I've listed in today's video, that is why one watch costs £50 and the other watch costs £5,000. If you want to see either one of these watches in greater detail, I'd recommend watching my reviews on them, and I'll have those linked down in the description below. But that's going to be all for today's video. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and a comment saying so, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future content. But until this video, goodbye.